So, ladies and gentlemen, I have this is probably one of the most exciting guests that I've had on my podcast. I would love to introduce Anthony Iannarino. Now, I do want to let the crowd know, and anyone that isn't aware of who you are, especially some of the younger cats out there. Anthony has authored some of the most profoundly influential books on sales that I've personally had the pleasure of reading. The one that I actually, and we're going to talk about it, but the only sales guide you'll ever need to know was kind of like my crash course into sales. Eat Their Lunch, Winning Customers Away from Your Competition is still in my top five. And now Anthony is working alongside Jeb Blunt in developing the AI Edge. Ooh. I'll go ahead and pass the horn over to you, Anthony. How are you doing today, man? Thank you so much for joining.
I think we're getting ready to do the second the edition of the AI Edge. I think we're going to do it. So
how's that?
There's more. Everything's changing so fast, so you have to keep up.
Yeah, I guess as it relates to the, we have this whole it really is a paradigm shift where we're looking at the advancement of AI. I'm starting to see kind of a transformation where AI is both this amazing tool when you have access with like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Grok, whatever new one is out on the block today. Google just released VO3, which is just insane video of people. It's almost virtually indistinguishable from real life. But I was having this conversation the other day, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, Anthony. How do you feel, sellers are as they're positioned in today's world, and how adequately they are going to be able to sell in complex environments? You've got mid-market, you have enterprise. AI effectively has neutered our brains because we're so reliant on it, and it's effectively scaling mediocrity. I guess what's your take on how AI ultimately plays a part with sellers now, and what's the best way for them to leverage it?
There's going to be a number of things that are going to happen in a few months. We'll probably start to see more of this. If you think that you're going to use AI to send emails to people that were not written by a human being, I mean, you can see it's so easy to see that AI wrote something.
Yeah.
I use AI every single day, not because I need it to give me the writing. I do the writing myself, and then I have a number of prompts that I use to edit it. So that's what it's a great editor. I mean, in books, all these books, there's probably typos in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Humans can't do that work. It's really hard to do it. I mean, you can read your book over like 7 times, and there'll still be something that's not right in there. But with the AI, it gets everything. It just gets every single thing. So I use, I've got one prompt that does editing. It does all the editing for me. And then I have to go back and look at it and make sure that it didn't do anything that I didn't want it to do. But it makes it really, really clean. When people have now started to do something like, we're going to just give it, there's nobody flying the plane, right? It's just, I'm going to tell you a story. This guy on LinkedIn, he spent $50,000 to create something that would be able to do all of the emails and follow-ups.
Mm-hmm.
And after he did that, he came back onto LinkedIn and he said, for the first 2 months, it worked great. It was converting people right over, and that was great for him. But he said in the 3rd month, it was completely out. Couldn't do anything after that. And he said, I wasn't really aware of how bad it was going to hurt the relationships of the people that I was sending this stuff to. So
Yeah.
there's no person behind it. I believe that we should keep being humans. I think we should talk to each other. I think we should work together. And it's like, let me try to say this. It's a screwdriver.
Yeah.
It's a saw. It's a tool. It's not supposed to do all your thinking for you. But if you wanted to make a good list of something, ChatGPT would give you a very good list of things to start with. If you wanted to do something like that, if you wanted to say, I want to do something really comprehensive, it would help you with that. And if you say something like, is there something I missed? Is there something that could make it better? It would help you with doing that. But I think you should write it yourself.
Yeah. I think one of the problems that I have with AI, and it's kind of like it's a double-edged weapon. So, I actually work as a individual contributor. I'm a big baby account executive working in cybersecurity. And one of the beauties of AI is that it enables you to be able to talk in a higher in a higher level, in the sense that I am able to now have these more technical, complex conversations, and I could actually do it pretty easily on the fly. I've gotten quite agile at typing into ChatGPT and asking questions live on calls, which is fantastic. But one of the biggest problems that I'm running into, specifically as it relates into, when we're going into like complex sales, enterprise sales, and you're starting to work around very technical products, right?
Yeah.
I would actually love your perspective on this. So one of the biggest fallacies that you run into AI, and this is me going on a tangent, I'm going to follow it up with a question, is the hallucinations piece of it. And I find that AI instills almost a borderline false confidence with reps, because they're reliant, you know what I mean? So they're so reliant on AI. And because it installs this false confidence, you'll say things very confidently because ChatGPT, the omnipotent overlord of information, actually makes up facts all the time. And so it's really hard if you aren't an industry expert and you don't fully understand the thing to know what information a ChatGPT is producing that's actually not really accurate at all. So this actually ties into the question that I want to give and pose to you, Anthony. So we talk about how AI is fundamentally reshaping how modern sales is going to happen, and that's a fact. But on the flip side, I also want to argue that I think it's removing a lot of the critical thinking. That if we think about like the early 90s, early 2000s, you didn't have AI, obviously. And so how does that play into like this modern shift where now people are almost kind of like potatoes when they go into sales calls, because like, I don't know how to think. Yeah, you don't know how to talk. You don't know how to think for yourself. You don't know how to ask questions because everything's AI, and all AI is doing is parroting what a human has said, right?
Yeah, it's like a parlor trick, like it has the answers, but it doesn't really know anything. It's just consumed everything that we've had in books and magazines and all of that stuff. So it's got all this information, but it doesn't have any, let's just say it doesn't know anything. It just doesn't know anything. So if you say this is the prompt, it'll try to make you happy, right? Say do this.
Kiss,
so
kiss.
I'm really happy when I put my prompt in and I say edit this, and then the edit's good, and I have to go back over it and just make sure that didn't change anything significant. But that's it. It does what you ask it to do. That's what it does. So it's nice. It doesn't have thumbs.
No,
Not
turns
yet.
out not yet. We'll get to that flavor. That'll be scary. Can't even
very
really do hands very well.
right. So that it can't pick anything up. It can't do anything other than that. It can just give you that. I think it's a very good tool, but if you rely on it as the way for you to think about things, I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think we should be doing what we should do as humans and make this the tool that it is like a screwdriver. That's what it is. It should do something. It edits really well.
Yeah.
If you were trying to say, if I was going to make a book and I wanted to have 10 chapters, and this, what would the name of those chapters be? It would be great with that. And
Yeah.
then you have to look at it and say, yeah, close, but we'll have to do some work on it, right? So I like it. I use it every single day, mostly on editing because I write every day. So,
Right.
and if you write, then what you're doing is you're thinking. That's what writing is. It's thinking. It's thinking on paper
Hmm.
or on a computer, right? So that's it. And I think if you let the AI do that work for you, I think that it's going to make you're going to be getting dumber and dumber as you go.
Yeah. And I think this is a trap that we're seeing with like we're starting to see this shift where you have these amateur or novice reps that they are relying too much on the tool and they're not allowing themselves to really be the carpenter. Because if you want to be, you can absolutely use a screwdriver. Anybody, a monkey can use a screwdriver, believe it or not. All you give them a screwdriver and intuitively they'll figure out how to use it. It's not complex,
Right.
but it's part of the broader equation, in my opinion. When we talk about having a toolkit and being able to pull out a hammer when you need the hammer and being able to pull out the screwdriver, pull out the saw. And so I think this is the point that in the conversations I'm continuing to have is, and this is actually why the old you can't completely eliminate the old school, the old guard. I actually think that it would be to the detriment of not only for new sellers, it would just make the buying experience absolutely miserable. And
Mostly it
I,
is anyway.
yeah, it's well, if you look at, I was actually interviewing this personality named Dale Dupree. I don't know if you know who he is,
I know
but
you.
he absolutely fantastic human being. But he made this wonderful analogy with this 80-year-old woman is ultimately going to still be the person that people buy from. And the analogy he made was, if you have two different, you have the mega billion-dollar company, and then you have the 80-year-old woman who makes wine. People are still going to buy from the imperfect, and they're still going to buy from the woman because it's that human touch, even if it's not as efficient, even if it's not as perfect and surgical. I think when we're looking at the experience, I actually think things are starting to regress in sales, because if we look cold calling, even though it's starting to be like AI is automating everything, AI's automation is out of control. I still think that there's a genuine appreciation for conversation, for relationships. Um, let me ask you this, and so I actually let's go back in time, right? So this is back when you worked in your family's business, and I believe you grew the family business from 3 million in revenue to I want to say it was $45 million in revenue. And you did this in the age that there was no AI, there wasn't a playbook, and you had to build it from scratch in what is arguably a very imperfect process. And so I for you, one of the things that you mentioned in your books, I want to say it was in the only sales guide you'll ever need. I may be getting the timelines mixed up for the books, but you actually mentioned that you didn't want to be in sales,
Yeah.
and that you actually started your career doing something that was like totally different. And yet you're obviously very, very talented and skilled in being able to craft that. Mind you, before AI, which is a crazy concept now, right? How did that transformation happen? Like, what was the shift? What transpired, and like, how did you identify, like, yeah, sales is for me? And then, like, how does that tie into, the human piece of it, the conversation, the relationship that's made you so successful?
I went out to Los Angeles when I was about 20. I got in my car and I drove out there and I went and found a job. So I went into 2 staffing companies because that's what I knew what to do. So the first company interviewed me and they said, we can't hire you right now until the vice president interviews you. And I said, okay, when can we do that? And they're like, well, he's not going to be back for 2 weeks. So I went to another place called Olston. Olston was like $4 billion, big company. And I went in to talk to the manager there, and I said, I'm looking for a job. I've been in staffing for a couple years in my family's business in light industrial. So he was all hyped up because he wanted to hire me.
Yeah.
And because I'm a difficult personality sometimes, so he said, you're going to have to wait for the vice president to interview you. And I said, well, then I'm going to go get another job right now. And he said, never mind. We're going to hire you right now.
Yeah.
And then eventually I did have the vice president come in, and it was not a pretty thing. I mean, his name's Peter Margarita. He's an Italian guy. He's very aggressive, very good business person. And he came in with the CEO of Olston. My hair was down to my waist because I was playing
What?
music. I was playing music in LA, so I have like this long hair. And the CEO wouldn't even I put my hand out, he wouldn't even touch it. Like, he was so mad. But I was really, really good at what I was doing. One, I was really good with the people that were coming in. But when I wasn't doing anything, I would go out and I would get clients. I wasn't supposed to be a salesperson, but I was doing it in Columbus. So I thought that's what I'm supposed to do, is go get clients. So I started getting clients, and then they put me in a field sales. My whole thing was Los Angeles. I had all of Los Angeles as my own territory. It was crazy.
Wow. That is crazy. Yeah.
It was amazing. I loved it, and I was out all the time meeting with people. And it turned out that I really liked selling. I liked talking to people. I liked learning about their business. I like helping people. So it worked really well for me. And when I came back, I left Los Angeles in 1992 after I had a grand mal seizure. I had something called an AVM, which is an arterial problem that I had right here. So you can see there's a giant scar right there that was opened up my skull, and they removed it. And then I wasn't allowed to drive for 2 years. So in 1992, there's no Uber. There's no way to go anywhere. You have to have a car in Los Angeles. So I went back to my home in Columbus, and I went back into the business and grew it from 3 million to about 50 million.
Wow. I actually want to pause there, because I think this is one of the and by the way, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think what's really difficult for a lot of sellers, and really to like put themselves in your shoes, if I'm not mistaken, you experienced seizures with that. You had I mean, you were dealing with just a lot of different traumas that for many, I think for many would have been career ending, and that somehow emboldened you into being as effective as you were. And when we think about those handicaps, a lot of people don't don't have the willpower to move forward with that. So if you're going to give advice to someone that is experiencing those problems, and they do have uh, some kind of like physical condition or physical problem, what type of advice would you give to those people that would embolden them to be able to sell without the fear that they're going to fail, or the fear, because you succeeded in a very cutthroat time, and so I would love that perspective from you.
I think that most of the time when something like this, all I can tell you is that I tried to drop out of high school every single day.
Yeah.
I was bored to death. They weren't engaging me in any way. I would walk 3 miles to a banquet place where I would wash dishes every day rather than going to school.
Yeah.
People come and bring me back to school, and then I'd walk out again just because I was bored. And then in 1992, after my seizure, I realized I have a brain,
Yeah.
and I have most of a brain. I have most of a brain. I don't have a whole brain, but I have a good part of a brain that works really well for me. So I've worked on my brain for a very long time. I basically eat every day blueberries, walnuts, and eggs, and
Yeah.
because that's on a scale of 1 to 10, that's an 8.5. The only thing that would make it a 10 would be olive oil. Olive
Yeah.
oil will get you all the way to a 10.
Yeah. Yeah. Eggs have been transformational. I got a nice little egg maker. Try to take my health serious. My whole side of my mom's side of the family is diabetes, and I'm certainly susceptible to it. So I've been eating like hard boiled eggs now. Like that's basically my entire diet for my breakfast, and it's fantastic.
It's good,
Yeah.
very good for you. It's choline for your brain.
Yeah.
Really good brain stuff.
Yeah. So I think so I actually have a neurodivergent brain. And so it's inspiring for me because when you feel that you're flawed and you're not in the same mindset or the mind space as some of these other people, that can put you in an inherent disadvantage. But I think, to your point and what I'm hearing from you, is you turned that into a superpower. You really steamed on, you didn't allow that what happened to control you. And I think when I'm going into sales, you have to take ownership of, I know I have a flaw, I know I'm imperfect, but how can I weaponize that imperfection to be better?
So is the person sitting across from you.
What's that?
Cat? Is that a cat?
Yeah, my cat is tripping out for some reason. I'm gonna edit that out here.
After the seizure, I went to college and I did my 4 years and 3 years. Then I went to law school, and then I went to Harvard Business School. So that was 9 years of me being in school. And so I've read a lot, and I decided I was going to do something with the brain that I have, and I'm still doing that.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, something that is very unique. I guess for you, one of the biggest lessons that I took away from reading your books is we talk about the concept of competitive displacement, and we talk about enabling relationships and being a trusted advisor when going into these conversations, going into these discussions with prospects. For you, when you're trying to competitively displace extremely difficult and complex deals, how do you even start that dialogue to be that trusted advisor?
My cat would be doing the same if I.
Yeah, it's really obnoxious.
This is my loft, so the cat is in my house up
It,
in Westerville.
yeah, if he doesn't stop, I'll put him up here in a second. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's not going to bother me at all. So I think that this displacement, because I was in staffing, every client I ever called on already had a staffing firm. So there's what's your choice? You have to do something. What I found that worked the best was being smart and teaching the client something that they didn't know about the labor markets. So I would come in with an executive briefing. That's one of the strategies that I've created, where we will help people with a better starting conversation. And what we try to do on the executive briefing is to do the why change. So in the Eat Their Lunch, that's mostly about that. Elite Sales Strategies is probably the second part of that book. So yeah, but that's what I knew how to do. So I would come in and I would tell them about unemployment, how many people are not working, and how many people are looking for work in Columbus, Ohio. And I would show them all this data, and then they found this is a person that knows more about something that they should know. And so they turned to me to ask me. So when I started doing the executive briefing, I thought I would do it one time. I thought I'd do it one time for one client. And then at the end of the year, the major person in HR said, "Are you going to brief us going into next year on what you want us to do?"
Oh,
Yeah, we were just talking about that. I wasn't talking about that. I wasn't even thinking about doing it again. I thought he already knows how this stuff. But as it goes on, the data changes. So I had to do it again. And then it took me about 6 months, and I realized everybody should go through the executive briefing part that we do, because then they understand what's actually going on in the environment, and they feel like they've learned something that's helpful for them. So I still do it that way.
what do you when we talk about, we're mentioning things around executive briefing, and we're going into trying to be a trusted advisor, specifically as it relates to, and I'm not sure what your familiarity is with like highly technical people when you're dealing with like very, very technical stakeholders. But when we're mentioning, like, going back into the previous pieces of our conversation as it relates to like AI, and we're in a technical conversation, and everybody has access to the same tools as you do now. And so with AI, there's all this information that there's really not a whole lot that I can share specifically that's going to illuminate an aha moment to get prospects to think differently, or at least that's how the interpretation would maybe on the surface. So if we're talking about trying to be a trusted advisor in 2025 with the tools and amalgamations and mutations of artificial intelligence that's at our fingertips, how would you say that you cut through the noise when that, like, how do you become undeniable in these conversations with prospects, knowing that other people can do that? And like, are there intangible levers that you personally use or that you suggest? I've got a couple thoughts on it, but I'd love to hear yours.
I think that you should be an expert and an authority. So that's in the Elite Sales Strategies book. I think that's what you should be doing. You should try to figure out to be, how am I going to be what we call being one up, which means we are an expert and we have the authority because I've been in staffing for, I don't know, 40 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I I've done it for so long. It's very easy for me. But I do it in other things too, like selling. So what I do as a trainer is a different thing, but it's the same thing. I've done that for a long time too. I've been in sales since I was 12. I was 12 with a paper route,
Hmm.
300 papers I had to do. I never got them all done. It was so too many on Sundays. And then I went and my next job was I was 15 and I was doing cold calls to get bike-a-thons.
Hmm.
I was the only person that got 2 bike-a-thons, but I was the only one that got any bike-a-thons.
Yeah.
So and then I got a job at a skating rink, and they begged me to come back, and I'm like, no, I'm not coming back. And then eventually at 17, I went into my family's business, and then I started selling enterprise level when I was 17. Family
Nice.
business. So nobody cares how old you are.
Right. I guess for you, and this is one of the things like I picked up, and I'll share a story on how some of the ways that I've helped overcome this, effectively trying to gain equal business stature when you're entering these discussions. And like one of my favorite ways of phrasing this is I consider myself to be a project manager first and foremost. And I think when you enter these discussions, especially where you are dealing, like I in my field. So just for context, so I work in cybersecurity, but I'm dealing with folks that have PhDs in cybersecurity, and these are people that have written literal theses in their field, in books, and this is what they do. They live and breathe this industry every single day. And here I am, somebody that's 5 months into the conversations, and it can be very jarring. At the same time, I've worked in other industries where I'm dealing with like solution engineers that very complex, very technical. And so what I've come to find, and how I've leveraged and leaned into being a trusted advisor, is one, acknowledging I'm not going to have the answers for everything. And I don't pretend to be that guy that has the answers to everything. I actually don't think you should have the answers to everything, because I'm not going to know more than you.
Gosh,
What?
I know so many things that I would have never known if I didn't have a client that did it.
Right.
And so I learned from them about how their business works. And that's a big part of my education is learning from people.
Oh yeah. And you have to take a step backwards when you I think it's really important that we take away our ego and attachment to any outcome. And so for me, and I say an attachment as in a hidden agenda, meaning I'm not trying to close or sell you. I want to see if I can actually help you. And I've entered these dialogues with the frame of I'm actually here to disqualify and tell you the reasons you actually don't want to work with me. And what I found is this instantly builds rapport from the experiences that I've had. But more importantly, when I know that I'm not going to be an asset for a customer based on their particular problem, what I've discovered is bringing in a resource that is more helpful. So
Yeah.
I love to work collaboratively with my team. An example of that, I was actually working this really tough prospect. I mean, just mongrel. So I was dealing with this SE. It was this director of solution engineering. And Anthony, when I say to you that this guy was anti-sales to his core, I'm 100% serious. He was anti-sales. Guy did not want to be sold to. And what was really interesting about it is he wanted desperately to be helped. And so one of the things that I did is I introduced first my SE to talk to him, and he bullied her the whole time. He was a tyrant. And I had to go into that conversation. I had to put my foot down. I had to say, listen, I understand that you don't want to be sold to, but we have a process here. And if you don't want to respect the process, I actually have some recommendations for companies that maybe would be a better fit for you. And it got in line. And so that lesson taught me about respect, having that self-respect of the conversation. But more importantly, so when I got into a motion with him where I did not know how to lead the call, I would bring in my vice president of solution engineering to talk to him one level above because I know he didn't want to be sold to. I brought in my customer success to show him a day in the life and how we're going to make him successful. And every step of the way, it was all based on value. And every step of the way, it was how can I make your job easier? And what's beautiful about it, though, and what I come to discover, there's a reason that prospects behave the way that they do. So if you have somebody that is anti-sales, they probably had a bad experience with a really bad prospect. And I actually want to, and which to that point, because they had that bad experience with that prospect, because they're so adverse to sales with me, I can only imagine that they're going to be difficult in their evaluations with other companies. So I'm gonna.
They have something that they're afraid of
Yeah.
being taken advantage of. I think. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's.
Yeah, and I think with sales, it goes into this game of manipulation sometimes where prospects feel that they're on guard. And I think the things that you teach in your books about being a trusted advisor is taking a step back and realizing, like, I don't want to sell to everybody. I don't want to have commission breath when I sell to you. I'm here to genuinely diagnose your problem like a doctor. For you, when we're looking about bad sales and we're talking about sales in general that gives a bad name to the business, is there any methods that you see that just makes you visibly cringe, that you're just like, this is what are you doing? Why are we still doing this in 2025? Like
Yeah.
it what does that look like for you in bad selling?
What we call it is the legacy approach, which is we're going to talk about our company, we're going to talk about our clients, we're going to talk about our solutions at the beginning of the conversation. That's just a pitch, and it's not right. It should be at the end of that. The why us that comes at the end. So when people start with the why us, I just know like you're not going to sell very well
No.
because you're talking about you and your what you want, but not what they want. So you have to get that out of the way. The why us, I think, goes at the very, very end, like the end of that sales conversation. That's when you start to say, these are the resources that we're going to bring to bear on this, and this is how we would do this for you. That's at the end. It's not at the beginning. And I think when people get, they want to sell so bad, but they sell bad.
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. If you would let them have the conversation first, then you could do the YS with nobody being unhappy with it.
Right. And you have to ask the question, like, why are you trying to prove yourself so early in a call anyway? It reeks of desperation. Like it's the nice guy analogy is what I call it.
It's
And
mostly because of the way people are onboarded. They're
mm-hmm.
told about their company. Our company's better than all of our competitors.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm sure. We have all the best clients. No, you don't.
Do you? Doesn't everybody?
We have the best solution. Everybody's got a good solution. I mean, there's nobody doesn't have a good solution anymore. Everybody's figured it out. It's been in the 90s. Everybody's got a good solution.
It's so funny though, because it's like if we look at some of these dinosaur like the BANT methods, right? Like the BANT methodology, which is garbage in my opinion. Yeah. It hasn't been relevant in years, and people I still hear it tossed around from time to time, you know.
My teams don't ever
no
disqualify anybody. We'll have a conversation with anyone.
Yeah.
The person that does the closest work with me, she'll take we'll take any conversation. And if it's not for them or it's not for us, it's fine. But it turns out that after that, they've come back to us even that they didn't think they were going to, but they
Yeah.
did because of how we treated them. We're not trying to disqualify them. I'm trying to figure out, could we help them?
Well, when I talk about like disqualification, it's the concept of not trying to be commission oriented when you engage in the conversation. I'm not actively trying to sell to every single person. I want to see where the problem is, what the gap is, and I do have that conversation though with everyone, and I'm with you. I will absolutely speak with anyone because you don't know the type of influence that they're going to have within their organization. You really just don't have a clue.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, though, at what point in the discussion do you find that it's not a good resource of your time, though, when you're speaking with somebody that very clearly is not going to be a qualified prospect? Because there comes a point where you do have to respect your time, and
I would give people the time because I think it's professional to do that.
Mhm.
But if they're not right for us, and in a lot of times in training, if they want to do a legacy thing, I'm not going to do it. I can tell them 30 people that could do it for them, but I'm not going to do it because I wouldn't be happy doing it. I'm more interested in modern selling than a legacy approach. So if they want legacy, they have to go somewhere else because
Right.
I just won't do it because I feel like I'd be stealing from them. I'm
Mhm.
stealing their time and their money, and they should get something that's going to be right for them, a modern methodology and a framework and those sort of things. I think that's the right thing to do.
What and these have been terrific insights for you right now as it relates to, and we're talking about modern selling. How do you what are how do you forecast what's ultimately going to be the end game when we're bridging in AI and human, and we talked about earlier the toolkit that is required, and we talked about still needing to be human. Where do you ultimately see the industry going for the future with AI, and how do you feel sellers best need to adjust to that before they feel that they're potentially going to be displaced, possibly, and that may or may not happen?
I think that this is going to be a very difficult time for a lot of sellers.
Hmm.
If you're not focused on clients, if you're not with a modern methodology, I'm going to tell you that there's going to be people who are going to use AI as a standalone thing that does by itself, which we are already seeing that happening. What you're saying, if you have a business and you're doing that and using AI to let it write whatever it wants to write and send it, or make a phone call, which is also now happening. There's going to be people who, like me, who are going to say, if you're not going to give me a human to help me make a decision, because this is what we do now. Remember, uh, if you are in sales, our job is to help this person make a rare strategic decision that they have to try to get right on the very first try. And when you say, I'm not going to give you one, but I'll give you some emails from an AI, people are going to go, I'm going to find somebody who's going to let me have a human to help me think through this thing.
Hmm.
I think that is where we're going to lose a lot of people. If you
Do,
want to do it with AI, I'm going to tell you, I will displace anybody that does that. That will
hmm.
be so easy to do because you're not even going to have a human. What I want a human make
Yeah,
a decision. I want somebody that knows more about the decision than I do, right?
yeah. Absolutely nothing kills trust faster than saying an M dash at an email from ChatGPT. And I absolutely know that you wrote your entire email with ChatGPT, which that leads to the next point though. Like, because if you're looking at outreach and we're looking at modern selling, and this is where I was talking about before, where it, at least in the age of like digital sales, for anyone that's in remote sales, one of the biggest challenges that I'm actually forecasting, and I'm going to play Notre Dame here, is if you look at like AI avatars. So we have tools like Hyperbound, which are using like AI coaching, and we're using there's this we're starting to see this emergence of AI lookalikes, of AI personas, AI avatars that sound exactly like salespeople. And when we talk about the displacement of mediocre sellers, I think this is the where the real virus is with AI, is that if you rely too much on AI and you don't allow yourself to critically think and to understand the subjects that you're selling, and you use AI to basically replace you, you will be replaced.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to happen. You can't personalize at scale with AI anymore. So for you, and this is I think like the last question, for reps that are now trying to break through the noise and you need to get actionable with it. Obviously, we I think we're in agreement. AI is not going to be the way to be able to do that every time. Anybody can do it. If you can enter a prompt, anyone can enter a prompt. So how do you what's the game plan for folks to break through the noise, like when they're prospecting, when they're trying to earn that attention from prospects and earn their time? What would you say is like that new way that we need to digest that and tackle it?
I think that if they're not using an insight-led discovery,
Mm,
if they're not able to reframe problems for the client, I think that's a problem. I think not being able to do an analysis on the gap between what they have now and what they need. I also think that strategic, open-ended questions that cause people to talk for more than just a few minutes. And I also think that we have the responsibility now. The way that I would say it is a decision making.
yeah.
I think that's where we are. I mean, there used to be solution, but now I think where we are is people are taking their time making decisions because they're trying to get it right.
Yeah.
And because for as long as I can remember, we're supposed to be velocity, right? Go fast, go fast. Well, if you go faster than your client can go, then they're not going to buy from you because you're not spending the time with them to give them what they know or what they're going to need to know to make that decision.
Hmm.
I think it's a mistake. It's another thing about where people say, I don't want to spend time. I've spent them too much time with this person. Well, I'll give them more time and I'll
Yeah.
win because I'm not afraid of giving people time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, you actually do practice what you preach. I spoke to you yesterday and you hopped to this podcast and me, and I'm so grateful. What's on your roadmap for the rest of this year? If I wanted to go out and support you, or you have folks that want to really learn from what new thing is Anthony Iannarino doing. What does that roadmap look like for the rest of this year and
I've
future
got
plans?
I've got a book that I'm not talking about right now,
Oh,
but I have a book that is going to be. I think it's probably going to be this book that everybody's going to want to buy this book.
oh,
I'm not going to tell you what it is, but
okay.
it will be. I've already got the outline, so it's being
Wow.
written right now, and it's going to be so different than any book that I've written or any I've seen.
That's exciting.
Wait on.
Is it going to be about enterprise sales or AI?
It's sales.
Is of course I wouldn't have guessed. That's no. Listen, Anthony. I really want to thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule. Just for reference, for those that don't know, Anthony charges a lot of money, for him to attend like keynotes. It's like $30,000, $50,000, and then for these type of conversations with classrooms, over $20,000. And so the type of information that you've dropped today, I again, it's everything is a gold mine because you're taking actionable real life experience of somebody that lived and breathed in the times before AI, and it continues to use it and leverage it to win. If you haven't had a chance, check out his books. There's a lot of them. My top 5 is Eat Their Lunch, and it is something I'll personally gift to anybody that does ask me. I firmly believe it's one of the every seller needs to read it if they're going into a competitive deal. Anyway, that's all the time for today. Anthony Iannarino, everybody. Thank you again for watching. Hope you have a good one.
Thank you for hosting here. I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and it's good to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. Cheers.